Hot dang. Okay.
You're good.
Okay. Well, Mel, it's really good to have you. I'm so excited. I'm thrilled that you decided to come over and do this with me.
Thanks,
I have like this hope for this podcast, and I just think that you're gonna add such a awesome details to it. So
thank you.
Okay, so your name is Melody.
Yes.
Melody, welcome. Why don't you give us a little, so who are you? Like, how old are you? What do you do? Sort of a thing.
Yeah. Well, thank you. First of all, I'm excited too. I'm excited that you would even invite me to be here.
Oh, you're really sweet.
But I'm really excited for you. As your friend, I'm excited for you and proud of you and feel like you are moving in the direction that you are supposed to be. And that just is so cool.
That's really sweet. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm excited for everybody that gets to be, blessed by you taking these next steps. So
thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So
like, what do you do?
I live here in Orange County. What I do is always an interesting conversation.
I eat and I sleep and I hang
things.
out. Okay.
I've been in the the nonprofit social impact world for a long time.
That's really rad.
Which some of it is rad, some of it is, what it is.
Well, behind the
Like
scenes
everything.
isn't always, totally.
Yeah.
I can hear you. I
Yeah.
can hear that. So we met,
Yeah.
how long ago? 10 years?
Gosh, probably.
Which is complete insanity.
Yeah.
Because so I knew you before I had Addie, which is crazy, because she's going to be 9.
That's insane.
She'll be 9. 9. Like, I remember being 9.
I know. She's she's not just like a kid, she's like a girl.
Oh,
she's
I know.
got feelings and
she's got feelings and real problems.
I know.
Her hair isn't straightened, and
right.
That's a big
But she's
problem.
always had a lot to say, which I don't know where she gets that from. It's really confusing to me.
Who are her parents? Gosh.
Yeah.
Okay, so we met, and I think we met through a mutual friend.
Yeah, Kaylee. Yeah.
Our good friend Kaylee.
Yeah, Kaylee. She was my roommate at the time. And I kept hearing about you because you guys were both in grad school together.
Wait, and I went to grad school because that's weird too, right? I've been a mom for so long that wait, I used to write papers and do stuff that meant something.
Everything you do still means something, Jen.
Well, anyways, you know what I mean. Okay, so we met back then. And then I feel like we organically just ended up making. I think we were all at a time in our life, almost maybe a transitional time.
Yeah.
We weren't still in our teens. We were in our mid-20s.
Yeah.
We were looking for friends that didn't just want to party all the time, but
right. Kind of figuring out how to grow up, how to adult together around the same time.
That was a really rough time.
Similar group of friends, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and then I got married, right?
Yeah.
So that was really weird because no one gets married that young around here. So anyways, so we had a lot of mutual friends, and I think at that point you were living in Newport. You had just moved back from Nashville, right?
Yep. Yeah. So I was born and raised in LA, went to college down here in Orange County, and then after graduating went to Nashville for a year, and it was an awesome year.
Why'd you go to Nashville?
I've always loved music and writing, and I have family out there, and they've been kind of begging me to come for a while.
Wait, can you sing?
No.
Oh, I was gonna say these are
nobody wants
these
that.
These are legit sing-song mics.
Okay.
Maybe we're starting a band.
We'll come back and record a song another time.
Okay,
that'll be season 2.
Season 2. Okay, perfect. Okay.
Yes. So went to Nashville. It was kind of a good now I can, looking back, I realize how much healing happened that year, which I'm skipping ahead, but it was such a good year. So when I came back to Southern California, which I kind of always knew I would because this is home, I was excited to be here. I felt like I had this new chapter for myself that I was starting here. And so I was living with our friend Kaylee at the time.
Okay, yes.
And another friend, Morgan, and the three of us just had such a fun year. We were living on the same block as 3 different groups of friends were all there.
So fun.
It was great. And I was working at World Vision. It's big.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
Humanitarian organization.
Yeah.
Well, no, not big as in big deal. Just it was
exciting
to be
doing
World
Vision is kind of a big deal.
They did great work.
Hold on.
I mean, I drank all their Kool-Aid. I could give you a podcast on that. But so I was proud. I felt like I was 25 and
I've got this.
Yeah, totally.
I'm came back from
doing
Nashville
all
and
this is
recharged.
good. Yeah, it was great. And I was in a relationship with this guy at the time who, at that point, was the healthiest relationship I'd ever had, and I was proud of that. And probably like a year into being here, we broke up, and that just like set off this chain reaction in me of things being very difficult.
Why did you guys break up?
I don't know, like nothing. It was nothing traumatic. It was just, I mean, you just didn't. He didn't.
Time.
Yeah, he felt like he couldn't commit and didn't quite know what was there, and I the whole time had felt like I wasn't even that into the relationship. I really cared about him as a person, but I wasn't that into, like, I wasn't super in love or anything.
Yeah.
But when all of a sudden he was acknowledging what was true for both of us, I was
think
freaking out.
That feels like rejection and abandonment. I mean, oh my gosh, that's
Yeah.
all the feels. Okay, so
All of it.
that was really, really rough for you, and at that point you decided there was something had to be done.
That was when I first started therapy, because I at that point had never really gone. I went once before for to one guy one time and hated it.
Right.
And was like, this guy's weird.
Yep.
Like, wasn't into it. Never went again. That was when I was like 21. And so now at 26, I'm going through this breakup, and like, oh my gosh, I can't stop crying. And I'm sad, and there's a loss here, and that's sad. But my like devastation wasn't matching.
It was
reality.
like Titanic devastation for like a tugboat issue.
Exactly. And I couldn't figure out what was going on. So I was like, I need to go.
How
I
did
just
you
felt
find
like
your-
I need to go uproot whatever is going on in me and like dig it up and figure it out, because I don't want to feel like this way.
Yeah, that's wise, because a lot of people just struggle through that, and then they kind of like mask it. They don't realize that like all of this pain might actually be from another time or another place, you know? So that's super wise of you. Yeah. How did you find your therapist?
I found her through a friend of mine had actually been seeing her as well. And that friend, when she had shared some of the insights that this woman had in her life, that friend happened to be someone I knew since I was 5 years old. And so when she would tell me the things her therapist said, I was like, oh my gosh, this woman is so insightful. How does she know that about you? And she's like, never hung out with you outside of a tiny room with a couch. And so that was kind of in my head, is like, maybe this woman is wise and is worth like trying out.
Well, I mean, like therapy is really freaking expensive, first of all. Yeah. And if you are in like this place of desperation, you don't always have the funds. Right. And then you're looking for somebody that you can go to that you like, and typically the cheap people are not like
as awesome. Yeah. Or it's church based and that's
right. That's a whole nother podcast. But I mean, at that time in your life, like, I mean, it must have been at a point where there was no going back. Like you knew that you needed to continue.
Yeah. Like you said, it was wise, and that's really sweet, but I felt just like, no, this is when you're drowning and you're calling for the lifeguard. Like you're not the hero for trying to swim back to shore. You just know you're gonna die. So you better start looking for a lifeboat.
But you had a choice.
That's where I was at.
Because that's a choice, right? Because other people I have seen maybe they get into a different relationship. Yeah. Maybe they mask it with drugs. Maybe they mask it with like there's pain there. And so so you went to therapy, and then you decided you needed to uncover like where all this pain is coming from, because it's kind of out of control, and you discovered that it probably had to do with something that happened in your childhood.
Right, go figure. Right. Okay. It's so funny you say that, because I feel like I rallied against that idea for so long. Too. I always felt like growing up, and I know we'll get into it, but like I never wanted to be a byproduct of other people's decisions. I didn't want to be seen that way. I didn't want to be defined that way. I didn't want to believe that about myself. So I just like grit and bear it, and
I'm fine. That's all
it's fine. And I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna and I'm gonna break whatever the textbook is that I'm supposed to do. And then you get into therapy and dig it up, and you're like, I am the textbook.
It makes total sense. How do you know me so well?
Yeah, but it's also kind of beautiful, like as you get going, to realize like, oh no, we would all go to a doctor when we break our arm.
I know.
We would all go see an oncologist if we had cancer, and trust someone in their expertise to help us heal and help us figure out what that looks like. And why there's been a stigma around doing that when your heart is broken, why it's hard to go talk to somebody about why it might be broken and how you can heal, if there is a path towards healing.
I think it's ignorant.
Yeah, I mean, and just so sad that there's been shame around. It's so cool. I feel like our generation and younger generations are all starting to blow that up, and that's so beautiful. But yeah,
it's hard. I mean, but I do think there's healing for other people when you start to talk about it. And so God bless your friend who said, hey, I've been going and seeing her, and that was a big step for me, and that might be helpful for you, because if she wouldn't have said that, you may have not been encouraged to go. So what exactly did you uncover? So maybe we can start off with like what your childhood looked like, your early childhood years.
Yeah. Well, let's rewind.
Let's do it.
So because this will all matter, I'll just start at the very beginning.
That's a great idea.
Is that okay?
That's perfect.
Okay.
You were born.
I was born.
Very good.
Hollywood, California. Thank
Ooh,
you.
In Hollywood.
I know, if you couldn't tell. Okay.
I like it. On the Sunset Strip.
Yeah, actually, it was on Sunset Boulevard, Hollywood Presbyterian
Okay, and I'm psychic.
I know.
Perfect. Okay, good.
Okay. Anyways, that was the most. We can edit that out, right? Okay, so.
No, we are not editing that. That's good stuff right there.
Oh gosh. So my mom and biological father, to keep things straight as the story goes, his name's Dan. When my mom found out she was pregnant with me, they ended up. She was already well along in her pregnancy. She was like 5 months pregnant.
Okay.
Bless her. And so...
Man, she had an easy pregnancy.
Yeah.
I knew the minute I was pregnant. I was like already 40 pounds overweight and nauseous as all get out. I knew I was pregnant.
Oh, I mean, she was 22 and
I hear
had
you.
a lot happen.
Yep.
So she figured it out. They decided they would go to Vegas and,
Elope?
do the thing. So, so they did that right before I was born. They had me. And the thing was, they kind of, their relationship, a lot of it was formed over partying and that sort of thing. And so my mom, upon learning she was pregnant, she really cleaned it up.
Okay.
And Dan didn't quite figure out how to do that. And so they
How
got
old was
married.
Dan?
I think he's 3 years older than her. So he
Okay.
had been like 25,
Okay.
26-ish. And he always really struggled with drugs. And so they got divorced when I was 2, officially. They pretty much separated after I was born.
Okay.
But he, most of my life until recent years, has really battled drug addiction and had a lot
And I
of
bet you
things
he's
that
got a
happened with
story
it,
too,
in and out
honey.
of jail. And of course,
That's right.
course, yeah. And so I always knew him growing up. It wasn't like I never knew who he was, but I never lived with him.
Okay.
And sometimes years would go by without seeing him, so I wasn't close to him. But I always loved him.
Right.
A lot. Like I didn't have that resentment towards him for not being there.
Interesting.
I had a lot of care and longing instead, and so there was a deep sadness that he wasn't a part of my life. But my mom,
was he a kind man? Or
he
is
was
he a
so
kind
kind, and maybe even erred on that side, because he would always promise the moon, and I believed him. And I think when he would promise it, he really meant it in the moment, but he never was able to deliver, even on the tiniest thing. So there's a lot of heartbreak around that, because it was like magic being around him, and it was so few and far between. But my mom always told me, way before I could ever understand what drugs were or had any kind of understanding of that, she would say, Dan he's not here because he's sick. It's not because he doesn't love you. And his sickness is the thing that's getting in the way from him showing you how much he loves you, but he does love you.
Wow, that's wisdom from your mom.
I mean, can you imagine? Like, she had every right to be
Like, that guy.
anything she wanted to say, and she didn't. And,
Wow.
And I think that always cultivated in me a compassion for him instead of an anger towards him.
That's a beautiful lesson, actually, as a parent, is how we can form the memories for our children.
Absolutely.
In traumatic and really hard experiences by having words and being careful with how we kind of explain these things to our kids. They have an opportunity to not be scared or afraid or angry. They have an opportunity to actually
Still love. Yeah. And there was still heartbreak in that. And I think it's still, I can't imagine how upset she would have been watching my heart break at times. And so at times she intervened, and she would intercept phone calls or cards he would send because they would promise he would come to my birthday party, and too many times of that not happening, she you know, she stopped
Wow.
telling me that's what he was saying,
Right.
or stopped letting him talk to me if he was
Yeah.
about to promise
She
that,
wanted
you
to
know.
protect you.
So I think she did everything she could to walk that line the best she could, and I'm grateful for that. But anyway, so that was my experience with Dan most of my childhood and adolescence, teenage years. But my mom, she got remarried when I was almost 6,
Okay.
and he and I hate the term stepdad because he was never my stepdad. He was my dad all along. I met him when I was 4, and he just loved me. Even when he proposed to my mom, he told her that he couldn't imagine his life without my mom or without me. And that was probably how my mom felt, like why she felt good about saying yes to this person, because he didn't want to just come in and be an outsider.
He really took you as his child.
He did.
That's really
yeah.
sweet. Did they have any kids together?
Yeah, I have a sister and 2 brothers with them. So I'm obviously the oldest, but yeah, also so I call him my dad. My dad.
Yeah.
He adopted me officially when I was 8, and so
Okay.
my last name is now Wilson because of his. It was Adib before that, Dan Syrian. So it was Melody Joy Adib. Now it's Melody Joy Wilson.
Yeah.
And he's always been my dad.
He was the one that showed up to the games and the
Totally.
rehearsals
Yeah,
and
he
the
taught me how
recitals.
to drive and ride a bike and
Yeah.
go karting, and you know, like, and I don't think we were ever still like emotionally super close, but that presence, that like figure and that constant was always really helpful. And so for a long time, my story, I always felt like was one of redemption. Like, how lucky was I had the second dad, and like nobody deserved that, but how grateful was I that I got to have this family experience and this dad, and
Right. Rather than living like with this.
just me
single
and my
mom or
mom, and
something,
not that there's anything wrong with that at all. Like my mom,
No, but I
was
think,
so
like,
powerful
having
to
a
see what
male
she did
present,
before, but it was really
yeah.
cool to have. I just felt really lucky, really grateful, and kind of like because of that whatever the pain was, that was sort of this ongoing dull thing with Dan, almost like I was excused from having to deal with whatever the fallout should have been from that, or whatever the statistics were from having an addicted parent, because I felt like, but like I bypassed that because I have this dad.
Right.
And I also had a grandpa who was like, I mean, I could talk about my grandpa for hours. He was the best.
Is that
super consistent.
Dan?
No, it's my mom's.
Oh, mom's dad.
Yeah, dad. And so
Wait, what's the new husband's name? Or your dad's name?
Wayne.
Wayne.
Yeah.
Wayne's your dad's name.
Wayne, come on. Such a
Sorry.
good name.
And then Dan was your
Right.
biological father.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
For all intents and purposes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So then, sorry, do you have a question?
Well, I was just gonna say,
Yeah.
so like, how did their marriage look? Was it a healthy marriage? Because if your mom, I mean, I don't know about
Right.
all of that, but like, I would just assume that it wouldn't be like all butterflies and rainbows. But maybe for you, because you were a child, it looked like that.
It's so interesting you say that, because like that's super insightful and only something I'm like recently able to put words to.
Yeah.
They ended up getting divorced when I was in college.
Okay.
And to me, it came as a blow and a shock.
Okay.
But looking back, it wasn't a shock because it was this fairy
Okay.
tale marriage. It wasn't all rainbows and butterflies.
But for
It never
you
was.
as a child, it
But
was
for me-
fantasy because you finally got.
Totally.
Yeah.
It was just, I was so lucky here I had this dad, and like, wait, what do you mean? Like, we're gonna start over, we're gonna lose that again. Like, huh? What are you talking about?
So how was that for you? I mean, I would assume like even because that's not your biological father. So,
Right.
but the other 3 kids,
Right.
it was their biological father. But
Right. And so I was already in college. They were all still at home
Okay.
when that happened. And so, I mean, I pleaded with my parents. I wrote them both these long letters begging them not to get divorced. I was so surprised by it. And even my friends at the time who'd like been on family vacation with us, they weren't that surprised by it. And I felt like I just must have had blinders on because I just didn't understand what was so off.
or heart rate.
Yeah,
What
what
were the
wasn't
issues?
working.
Yeah.
I really didn't get it. And yeah, so when they got divorced, I felt like, well, like it really rocked me. Like, wait, am I getting divorced too? Because I was kind of a package deal in this whole thing.
Oh.
Like, do I have to change my last name again? Are you still my dad? And he and that's not about him. That was about all of
Right.
my internal thoughts, because he was vocal about, of course, you're still my daughter. Of course, I'll still be
Oh my
here.
gosh, that is so hard.
Yeah.
That makes me want to cry. That's like so overwhelming.
Yeah, but, and no, people get divorced. You can never say there's all one side, no matter what it is, right? There's two people. But I felt so upset with him. Like, it was more his fault than my mom's at the time. And now as an older adult, I'm like, they both have whatever.
Absolutely.
They have. But,
is that when you went to Nashville? So
a little bit after that, yeah.
you needed to just get a break.
Yeah. So that was when my aunt and uncle in Nashville, who are like two of the greatest humans on planet Earth, they're actually, my aunt in Nashville is Dan's sister. And so even though I was never close to Dan growing up, she was always this like really beautiful bridge into my life that still kind of connected me to the Adib family, because otherwise I'd never really connected
That's
that
awesome.
much with them. And yeah, so she was always this like really deep soul who I wouldn't talk to very often, but when we did, we would just dive down.
And that's so lovely that they
Yeah.
connected you.
Yeah, and they brought me out there. And then my uncle, like, who I didn't know that well till I got there, he was like this other father figure in the best of ways, who they just wanted to like love on me. When I first moved out to there, I lived with roommates and ended up shortly after moving in with them and my two younger cousins. And it was like this year of living with a family, and not a perfect family, but a really loving, wonderful
Which I think is
family.
what all human beings want, is to be a
Totally.
part of something that's special and full of love and safe, you know?
Yeah.
So then you end up coming here, the boyfriend breaks up
I
with
come
you,
back.
you're having this hard time, you're in therapy,
Yeah.
and what happens?
Yeah. Well, therapy ends up being this like really cool process for me of really being able to kind of examine all of this and recognize even just patterns and dating that I'd had and
Who did
different
you end up
things.
dating?
Well, I did for a long time, from the time I was like 13 until like on and off until 23, with a lot of years off in between. There was this one guy that I was just at the time I would have said in love with, like who was older than me, who battled addiction in his own ways, who made me feel like $1 million when I was in front of him, and like trash when I wasn't, and mirrored a lot of what I'd experienced. With,
Isn't that interesting how we do that?
Totally.
It's so unconscious, and yet we do it. We literally live in the same patterns that we're trying to get away from because it's so unconscious.
Totally. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Yeah, completely. So I mean, that took up so much of my like emotional heart space for all those years, and people would like draw parallels to Dan during that time and be like, "You guys are out of your mind. They're nothing alike." Blah blah blah.
Right.
And then way after that relationship had ended, when I was in kind of therapy, looking at my life, I was like, "Oh,
The parallels between the boyfriend
gosh.
and your Randy.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the relationship, the next relationship that had kind of, when that broke up, that was the one that took me to therapy. It wasn't the first one. That one didn't have as many parallels with Dan, but the feeling of abandonment and rejection when that one ended, that's really what that was about. And even with my parents divorcing, and I think with how heartbroken I was, it had, there was just a lot of healing to happen in that.
I mean, it just makes it more complicated because he was your adopted father, right? I mean, but it doesn't mean it's any less painful or any more painful. I mean, divorce is painful.
Yeah, for everybody.
And this is, and this speaks to everybody. I mean, what is it? Half the marriages don't stick. So there's so many kids out here that have come from divorce experience. And you know what? If we're being honest, there are times when I think divorce is necessary, when there's issues that are unsafe or abusive, that it's time to move on.
Fully agree. That's the most loving thing at certain times you can do for your children.
It would have been nice if my parents would have gotten divorced, because that would have been a positive thing. But I love that you're sharing about this as a child with parents that got divorced as an adult, because I think I think a lot of parents stay together for the kids, and then the kids grow up and then they think, this is the time.
Right. And it's interesting because I'm so much older than my siblings. Like my sister is 7.5 years younger. My brother's 10. I have another brother who's 17 years younger than me, who was born when I was a senior in high school.
How old is he?
He's 18 now.
Oh, there's that.
My little baby. But like,
do the math. I can't. Okay.
I'm still 26.
That's how I feel.
But they, those, I mean, I just like adore all of them so much, but I'm very much the big sister / like junior mom or something in their life, because I had a very different childhood than any of them
Absolutely.
did. Like,
Yeah.
one, starting with our mom was a single mom when I like was first in this world, and then I had
Yeah,
this
you
like,
have-
whole other thing
Well, you
with
know-
like having a whole family in unit, and theirs was either broken in the middle, or my youngest brother, like, he never even knew that.
Well, you know,
so different.
that's
for each
also
of us.
interesting to point out, because each child has a very different relationship and a very different memory of their parents, because their parents are different people.
Right.
I mean, I'm a different mom to Addie than I am to Bennett. I just am, because I'm growing. I'm different. Maybe the circumstances in my life.
And that's
wasn't-
not good or bad, but it's also
Just
because
is.
they're different, right? You don't have two robots, you have two human children.
And
They're
children are very different.
You're going
right?
to interact just like you and I
Totally.
have a different friendship than you and your other friend.
That's
That's not
right.
because you're not the same. That's because
right.
we're not the same.
Yeah,
Like,
totally.
right? So
Totally.
it makes sense, but it was also, that's also just its own layer to all of it.
I just remember, so then your story kind of gets more kind of intricate. If it couldn't already be so kind of complex, it becomes more complicated. I remember you coming to my house one day and saying, Jen, you're never going to believe this. Like, after all of this, like, kind of digging into Dan and how his addiction, impacted my life, and a single mom, and this and that, and then being adopted, like, you got to hear this part, because this is
Right.
rocking my world. So
Right. So then, and prior to that, I feel like I had a few years of kind of finding my rhythm. Definitely not arriving, but sort of figuring out more who I was, and
Okay.
being like
on the road to health.
appreciating some of what was coming
Getting
out of the
healthy, yeah.
therapy. Yeah, and feeling like, okay, like I got a handle on this. at
And
least.
then, and then life happens, because this is how it goes.
Totally. So then, I was given 23andMe as a Christmas gift one year from people I work with, and
You can get a good deal on Amazon during
Yeah.
Christmas time on 23andMe.
yes.
I still have a box in my cupboard that I haven't taken for some reason. I wonder why I should.
Well, they're all here for
Okay.
you just call me when you're ready.
Okay.
Yeah, so I took it, and I thought it was going to be cool because to maybe connect me a little bit more with Dan's side of the family,
Yeah.
he's Syrian and Spanish, and so it's some of those roots. And then also my mom's adopted, and now we know her biological mom and that side of the family. That's been really cool and beautiful, but we don't really know anything about her father's side. And so I just thought, well, this will be cool. People always ask me what I am, like I pass as white, but people still always ask me as like, what are you?
Yeah,
And
you're like, I don't know.
yeah, brown hair, brown eyes, olive skin, like,
Yeah.
whatever part of the world I'm in, people speak to me in that language usually, which
That's
is
like
always
Jeremy, too.
interesting.
He
Yeah.
always speaks Spanish. She's like, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Hear Spanish speakers speak to me in Spanish, or when I've been in Arab speaking countries, they speak Arab. When I've been in Italy, they speak Italian.
Interesting.
It's, yeah. So, all that said, I'm like, oh, well, this will be interesting.
Uh-huh.
Interesting. I took it, and some of the stuff didn't come back like I was expecting. Like, Syria didn't come back. Like, my grandpa was Syrian.
Yeah. Like,
And my great grandmother, who I knew for a long time before she passed, she's Syrian, moved here when she was 14. Like,
okay, so it's
so
showing
I'm like,
that.
okay, well that's weird. But it said I had a lot of Balkan in me, and at the time, so I'm googling like
What's Balkan?
what countries make up the Balkans.
Right.
And they're all, to be fair, like a lot of Mediterranean-ish countries that are right near Syria. So I'm like, okay, so maybe they just had bad record keeping, and my great-grandparents migrated from Syria to one of these other countries and just
Okay,
thought
that
they were
makes sense.
Syrian.
Yeah.
So you kind of come up with a story that makes sense,
Yeah.
and that was it. I had no reason to ever think anything other than that. So I left it alone. And about a year later, my brother Zach, so for my mom and Wayne, Zach, he took 23andMe.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, cool. Aren't these tests supposed to, like, know if you're related to someone else who takes the test?
Yes, you have like a profile, right?
Yeah. So, like, okay, cool. So I was like, I want to see if it knows, like, without us telling it that we're brother sister, like, if it knows, or technically, I don't call them half siblings, but technically,
Yes.
if we're half siblings. So I signed back in, and I ended up finding out this whole piece of the profile that I totally missed in the beginning. And it was called DNA Family Relatives. And so, to just give you a little overview so this makes sense, when you take these tests, in case you don't know, you spit in a tube, like put all your saliva in this tube, you mail it into this lab,
Great.
and they analyze it or whatever. And from your spit, they can tell you like what your ethnic makeup is, and they can also connect you to anyone else who you share as the smallest percentage of DNA with, who's also spit in the tube. So
Right.
Jen, if you and I were fifth cousins,
So let's
and
spit
we both
in
spit in a
tubes.
tube,
Let's make
like
it happen.
your name would come up on my list, you know?
I better start spitting. Maybe.
Right.
Maybe that's happening.
Spitting seems like an appropriate release here.
Mm-hmm.
So I find this profile, and it says I have over 1,100 people that I'm related to. I'm like, huh? Who've taken 23andMe. So
What?
which is insane.
Okay.
And it orders them from the most DNA percentage you share to the least.
Okay.
And based on the percentage of DNA you share, it predicts your relationship.
Right.
So the top of the list says my brother, Zach Wilson, and we share approximately 25% DNA. And then there's the prediction. The prediction's just coming from an algorithm.
That's right.
And so the prediction says, which I don't understand any of this at first, it says, predicts he's my nephew. I was like, the hell? I remember when my mom was pregnant with Zach. How's he my nephew? Is my mom my sister? Like, who's lying to me? What's going on? And I was, very confused about all this. And then I started digging into it more and realized, like, no, actually, with 25% DNA, there's only several options that it can be.
Okay.
So 25%, it's aunt, uncles to niece, nephews,
Mm-hmm.
half siblings, and grandparents to grandchildren.
Okay.
And that's it. After 25%, if you go up from there, the next, you jump all the way up to 50, and that's parent to child or full sibling to full sibling.
Okay.
Or you go down to first cousins, which is like at most like 12.5% or something, and even a lot below that. So there's like nothing else anywhere close to the range of 25. And so I'm like, oh, okay, well, so I'm almost 10 years older than Zach. So of course, maybe statistically I'm more likely to be his aunt.
Okay.
is.
All the
So-
things going through
So
your
it's
head.
fine. So it got the prediction wrong. No big deal. Phew. My mom's not my sister. Okay, we're cool.
Praise the Lord.
Thank everybody. So I'm cool. But then I noticed there's two other names below his, and it predicts that one of them is also, two other names. Both of them are about 25%, and one it predicts is my half brother, and one is my uncle. And I'm like, well, I've never heard of these people. They share the same last name, and who are they? Like.
Okay.
And because it predicted Zach wrong, and at this point I didn't fully understand the 25% thing, I'm thinking like, oh, my mom's adopted, so maybe they happen to be distant cousins on that side of the family or something.
These are all very plausible.
I'm coming up with all. I mean,
these are great excuses. I love
right. When you have no reason to doubt what you think your narrative is, like, it's wild how you come up with theories to fit it.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
I mean, that's called that's denial at its finest, right? I mean, like, nope, I'm a mermaid.
No.
I believe I'm a mermaid. I've been told
Right.
I'm a mermaid. Like,
Fully breathe underwater.
like
watch
come
me.
on, like, yeah.
Yeah.
And then one day,
Right.
you're not a mermaid. You
Right.
know.
Like, what is happening?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, this is a very long story, but to kind of get to the point is I end up after a lot of I had 3 days basically of being like Nancy Drew.
Right. You
Like,
are encyclopedia.
insane. I'm like
Google.
I'm looking up birth records in the state of California and
Yes.
all these places. Like I'm trying to figure out what is going on. Initially, I was like, okay, well, it makes sense that Dan could maybe have another child that he doesn't even know about that's out there, and that's how I have this brother.
Okay.
But how could he also have this person that's old enough to be an uncle that would be his brother, and they have the same last name? Like, could also make sense that, like, maybe my Grammy or Grampy, like, had some secret child, which they didn't, but, and they've passed away now, but maybe that's what's coming out. But they wouldn't both share the same last name, right? Like, he wouldn't have a brother and a son that
Right.
have the same last name. So, anyway, I kept digging and ended up discovering in all of that Dan, after all of this, is not my biological father. It was a man named Jimmy who I'd never heard of.
So your whole life, you believe that Dan, this drug addict man who's supposedly your dad, just can't get it together, and that's why he's not a part of your life. And so you believe you are the daughter of a drug addict and a single mom. And you're so excited that you are finally adopted into this more, I guess, higher functioning family. And then as an adult, you realize that this whole time you believed you were the daughter of a drug addict. You really weren't the daughter of a drug addict.
Absolutely.
That's wild.
It was.
That's the mermaid thing. You're actually not. Like wait, what?
What?
But you've been behaving as though you were a child.
Oh yeah. I mean, the guys I've dated,
Right.
the therapy I've done, the narrative I've been telling myself is I've been abandoned, and there's addiction in my family, and I need to be really careful. And I better never smoke a cigarette because I'll be hooked on crack by the end of the
That's
day.
right.
Like you know,
that's right.
like all kinds of things that have been my story about my reality that just haven't actually been based on the truth. And I also want to say that Dan, at this time that I'd figured it out, for probably several years leading up until this, it'd been the most beautiful relationship I'd had with Dan ever. And like, it was still messy, it still wasn't perfect, like he was still figuring stuff out, and yet to my understanding, it's like the cleanest he's ever been.
Okay.
And we were forging this relationship where it was the most frequent contact we ever had, where he was just trying so hard. And when we would get together, like 6 months would have gone by and he would have collected all these little like trinkets for me, like this treasure trove of little presents, and be so excited to give them to me, and they'd be like just kind of the silliest, funniest thing.
Yeah.
But they meant so much because he was
thought
so
of you.
excited, and he was so proud of me and so grateful that we had this relationship. And so for me, it felt like so many answers to so many prayers growing up
that
I finally like realized. And even though he wasn't a dad in the sense that like I wanted him to be when I was little, I was still so grateful for him, and just felt like how special that we could have this relationship. And so to now find out, are you kidding me? Like it's not even him. It just felt like a cruel joke. Like, do you know all the therapy I've been through and all the heartbreak and all the like working hard to salvage this relationship,
and now I gotta go
and
find.
now I have it, and now it's like not even like the thing.
Right, and now it's like, well, now here's your choice. Like, now what do you do?
Right.
Do you go find this Jimmy guy?
Right.
Like, do you tell Dan? Do you crawl under a rock and hope it goes away?
Totally, yeah. I mean, I ended up sitting on it for like 6 months. I didn't know what to do. I was convinced I'd like found enough information to put the whole puzzle together, and I knew who it was and I knew who it wasn't at this point. And then I just sat on it because I felt like, okay, well, this Jimmy, what I had found out about him based on my very impressive Google stalking,
that's right,
was that he was married with a family, and they didn't live far. They were in LA, and I didn't know what that was going to look like, but I felt like I don't want to go, throw this other person's life upside down. I assume he has no idea even I exist. Dan thinks I'm his. My mom thinks I'm Dan's. There's no way this person knows about me. So I didn't know, but I just kind of had it in my head as, kind of spent some time going like, I'm okay. Like, I'm okay. I know who I am, regardless of who any of my parents are or aren't.
That's right.
Like, this is who I am. And so if I end up meeting this person and he's horrible, or he wants nothing to do with me.
Well, I guess, that
I'll
is
be
a fear,
okay.
right? Like, what if he is
Totally.
like a crazy person? What if he's mean? I mean, right.
So, yeah, there's so many things. And so I think I got to a point of going, I don't need to figure any of that out now. I just need to kind of like absorb this for myself, because it was a pretty like, bomb exploding experience. And as it was settling, though, I did feel like, I'm going to be okay, whatever it is. Like, I am okay. I'm going to be okay. I know who I am. If I meet this Jimmy guy one day and he's awful, I'm still going to be okay, And best case scenario, he's cool and he does want to meet and we have a cool conversation. Like, won't that be interesting?
You know what I find interesting?
I left it there.
I find it interesting in terms of timing.
Mm-hmm.
Like the timing in your life that you would find this out.
Yeah, I was 33.
But like you were at a different place emotionally. Like I don't know if you would have been able to handle that kind of thing 10 years ago.
Absolutely.
Or
yeah.
if you would have been able to sit on it for 6 months. You know,
Right.
kind of like putting things in check, having people to like support and rally around you, like your therapist or whoever. Like, I just feel like that it was a blessing that it came at
Absolutely.
that time,
Yeah.
where you finally had peace with Dan,
Yeah.
peace with Wayne, and now Jimmy. Now it's like, okay, now I can handle this.
I fully agree. And I think when I first found out, it felt the opposite. It felt like the timing was cruel.
Mm-hmm.
Even because like now Dan and I were in this like beautiful spot, or the most beautiful I'd ever known with him, you know? And so it felt like, wait, and am I going to lose that now?
Yeah.
Like, are you kidding me? But I think to your point, it is really cool because I don't know at 17 how I would have,
Or,
you know,
or what
handled
if
any of
your
it.
or if your relationship with Dan wasn't as good, right?
Right.
That you're in a really bad spot with Dan.
Yeah.
I mean, that would have been hard too.
Yeah, it really would have. Or yeah, and now I mean, I'm so grateful for Dan and all the ways that I do feel formed by him, even though come to find out he wasn't my biological father. That I don't want to trade those pieces of myself, and I'm really glad I didn't find out about this at a time that maybe I would have said, okay, well, F it, like,
Yeah.
then bye.
Yeah.
And, you know,
No, but that's
Yeah.
wisdom. I think that's really wise. I think it's great. I think it's beautiful. I think that adds to your story. So, did you ever end up like reaching out to Jimmy?
Yeah. So like I said, about 6 months in, I
Okay.
got an email one night from my uncle, Jimmy's brother, the person who had showed up on my 23andMe. And so he saw me on his 23andMe at this point.
Okay.
And he's a doctor, which means he didn't doubt any of it right away. He understood the science behind all of it much
Okay.
faster than I did.
Right.
And he knew immediately the only possible way I was his niece was if I was his brother's daughter. And so he reached out to me and sent me a really kind email or message through
Okay.
23andMe and just said, "Hey Melody,
I think I'm your uncle.
I realize how we're connected, and have you reached out to anybody yet? I'm here for you, however I can help you." It's like, huh?
That is so nice.
And gave me his information, and if I wanted to contact him. So we ended up emailing.
Okay. You tell your mom?
At this point, I hadn't yet.
Okay.
So we can come back to that. At this point, I hadn't yet. I was convinced this whole time that my mom was convinced I was Dan's. That there's no way my mom would have pushed any of this story along or allowed for any of the story to unfold the way it did. And that she was 100% convinced I was Dan. So I always knew she didn't know. And also, like,
Right.
the timing of kind of our relationship at the time, I just felt like, right now I don't want to bring it up to her. I just want to figure this out.
This is so heavy. I'm just like trying to put myself in your shoes. Like, that's a lot. That's a traumatic event in itself.
Yeah, it was a lot. I mean, I'm great. I had a really supportive boyfriend and friends at the time that were all just really, let me kind of lean on them. So I'm grateful for that.
Yeah.
That's how you get through anything. Is good people.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So
You didn't talk to your mom yet. You
I hadn't
just
talked to my
continued
mom.
to talk to your uncle.
Yeah, so, and actually it was all the same day, so we emailed back and forth a little bit, and that night I'd given him my number and said, well, yeah, we can chat on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
He called me, and it was like somebody had drafted a script for him of all the perfect, best things to say.
Okay.
Not in a fake way at all, in just the most genuine, like, incredible, unexpected way. And the first thing he said when I answered the phone was, "Hi, Melody." He's like, before we start talking, he's like, I just want you to know that I called my brother today, your biological father, and I told him about you. He didn't know you existed. And he thinks this is the best news in the world. He's so excited. There's only boys in our family, and he just kept saying, oh my gosh, I've always wanted a daughter. I can't believe this. This is amazing.
Oh my gosh.
I know. I was like, what?
That is the
Who says
sweetest.
that? Like, what? Yeah, it was really cool.
He's a good man.
Yeah, really. I mean, that floored me. He's like, so I want you to know that, first of all, that he's like, that our whole family's excited about you.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. He's like, and I also just want to acknowledge that, we know you're a 33-year-old woman and you've had a lot of life and family and parents, and we just want to respect that and honor that and go at whatever pace you need. And nobody wants to step on anybody's toes here, but but all of our hearts are open to you.
That
And
is
so
the sweetest
however we can be here for you and help you figure it out, like we're here for that. And yeah, so
So
I'm
there
like
are good
a
people.
mess.
There
Yeah,
are like good people.
yeah.
I mean, that's crazy
Isn't
when
that
you.
unbelievable?
I know.
You just think like some people's hearts are just like primed that at any given moment they could find out life-altering information and respond in that way. Like, what?
That's amazing. That's divine and
incredible.
powerful. Yeah.
It's incredible and so far beyond anything I had ever. I mean, I never even like tried to picture any of that. It was just, it's either going to be horrible or a best case scenario, it'll be okay. Like there was never something
Which is
beyond.
kind of how you lived as a child. Is it's either going to be horrible or just okay.
Prepare.
That's right.
Yeah. Or yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
So
So
did you continue speaking to him?
So
on
we
the
talked
phone?
for, I don't know, a little bit that night, and then he was like, okay, is it okay if I give your number to my brother? And I was like, well, just so you know, like, I've had 6 months, so I'm okay with it, but is he okay with it? Because you just talked to him this afternoon, like, he probably hasn't even had 6 hours,
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, if he needs time, that's fine. And my sweet brand new uncle said, he's like, you know, Melody, he's like, I don't mean to overstep my bounds here, but he's like, if I might interject, it almost sounds as if, he's like, as if maybe you've been managing other adults in your life for a while, and I just don't want you to worry about that here. You don't need to worry about Jimmy. Are you okay with him calling you? Because Jimmy can worry about himself. Like, and if you're okay with it, he's like, I know my brother, and I know if I give him your number, it's not going to be 30 seconds before he wants to call you.
What kind of doctor is this guy?
Right? I know.
That is exactly what you say. Yes. You do not need to worry about him.
Yeah, I'm looking at the phone like, do you?
Oh my gosh, this guy.
Very
Can I be friends with him?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he's great too.
Oh my
They're all
gosh.
great.
Amazing. Okay.
Yeah.
So did Jimmy call you?
So I hung up with Dennis, and less than 10 minutes later, my phone rings, and it's Jimmy and his wife, who is also like this angel superhuman being, and they're both on the phone, on speakerphone, and we all just start crying. He's like, I'm just so excited. He's like, this is one of the best days of my life. This is now almost going on 2 years, like April 10th, 2018. This will go down as one of the best days of my whole life. I can't even believe this. And she just kept chiming in like, oh honey, we're so happy. She's like, we just finished our guest bedroom and you can come stay here whenever you want. Like she's chiming in, and he reiterates a lot of what his brother said. It was just like, you know, we can't imagine what it's like to be in your shoes, but our hearts are wide open, our doors are wide open, our life is wide open, and whatever pace you want to take this, we just can't wait to get to know you and bring you in, like your family. I mean,
but okay, how old are
I
their kids?
know.
Like, how old are their kids?
well, it gets slightly more confusing. And so Jimmy and his wife, Marisa,
Yeah.
they have two sons together. So that's Demetrius and Alexander.
Okay.
And they are, oh gosh, I think now they're 13 and 14.
Okay.
Going on 14 and 15. They're the best. So I have these like two really young brothers that are just
Rad.
so cute and fun.
Yeah.
And then actually years ago, Jimmy's brother Dennis, and when he was trying to start a family, I don't know any of the details, and not that they're any of my business, but I know that they couldn't have them biologically, he and his wife at the time, and so Jimmy ended up donating his sperm. So Dennis has two sons that are his sons, but technically Jimmy's biological sons, right?
Jimmy's a giver.
Yeah. Right. Right. Maurice
This
made a
Jimmy.
joke. She's like, I always knew this might happen.
This is Jimmy.
Yeah, Jimmy.
He knows what he's
Jimmy.
got. Jimmy's working with a lot. He's got a lot
But
of.
he's generous. though.
Yes, he's very generous in his
all the ways.
giving.
Yeah, but so that was cool too, right? You have this family that is like trying to figure out what to do about even just them having fertility, whatever their stuff was, and have a brother that steps in and then also never expects to be treated like more than than an uncle, but has a good relationship with his nephews,
Okay, hold on. So have
who are
they been?
technically my half brothers.
So
even
Jimmy
though
and his
they would be,
wife,
like, cousins.
they're they got married, and it's their first marriage, both of them.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
they got married and
Yeah.
have been married, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah, and Marisa has a son from a previous relationship
Okay.
that Jimmy has always been like a dad to that son too, which is cool. Even and that, so that brother, he has a dad also, but he's sweet too. So I somehow in this got, counting him, including him, I have 5 new brothers, right?
Oh
And
my gosh.
like 5 new brothers, 1 new dad, 1 uncle, 1 aunt, a little Greek grandmother. So I'm Greek apparently at the end of the day. I'm not Syrian. I mean, I feel like now I'm just gonna claim all the things for the rest of my life. But
all of it.
my last name would have been Evangelitos.
Okay.
Greek sounding.
Okay.
Um,
But we're gonna stick with Wilson
But
because
Wilson is-
Wayne was there.
yeah,
and he-
Wilson is what it is.
How did
but
Wayne
yeah.
feel about this? Wait, how did everybody? Wait.
Yeah.
Okay. So wait, did you end up meeting?
Yeah, so we speak on the phone at night. It's beautiful. 5 days later, my boyfriend at the time and my brother Zach, they were the best, and they went with me over to his house.
Okay.
And I don't know if you end up putting this on like a video or YouTube or whatever. If it's possible, I can like give you a video of us meeting because it was really cool.
I love that you taped it.
Yeah, but we taped it. And yeah, so we went over to their house, and I met 2 of my brothers that day. Actually, I met 3 of my brothers that day. Maurice's son was there too. And so we all just kind of hung out at the house for a little bit, and then just the adults went to my brother Wes and Maurice and Jimmy, the 5 of us, went out to dinner that night, and we just shut the place down. We were there until, for hours, just pouring wine and talking and talking and talking, and it was so fun. And they were just, I mean, it just blew my mind in all the ways that
Could Jimmy
even be the
remember? Like,
option.
did Jimmy?
Jimmy didn't really remember my mom, and
Okay.
we'll get to my mom, but she didn't remember him either.
Perfect.
So, I mean, isn't that wild? And just like, well, guys, you created me, so thanks. Here
There
I am.
was a moment where
right.
we're connected here.
Yeah, and people keep asking me, they're like, so have they met yet? I'm like, oh, well, they met, you guys. It just
they just
they just haven't
don't
re-met.
remember. Yeah, they haven't re-met.
Yeah.
Okay, wait. So then, did you tell? Who did you tell?
So
So you told your brother.
Yeah, so my
Zach.
brother knew, Zach, and you know, some of my close friends.
But
knew
I
at
mean,
that
like,
point. But then I
Dan,
finally,
Mom, Wayne.
yeah. So now that I had met Jimmy and it turned into this whole like beautiful story, I called my mom. It's like, okay, Mom, like let's get lunch.
Sit down.
We need to meet up. So we did. She still lives in LA. Everybody is pretty much in LA. And so I went up there, and we went out to lunch, and I knew, she just knew something was up.
Like significant was that?
Significant. I think she thought I was either going to say I eloped, or I was dying, or, you know, like something.
Some
like she
crazy,
was,
yeah.
And yeah, whatever she was prepared for, it wasn't this.
Right.
So we're sitting at this restaurant, and I was like, so Mom, do you know what 23andMe is? Those like genetic tests. And she's like, oh yeah. I was like, yeah. I was like, well, I took one. You know, someone gave it to me. I wasn't even trying to take it on my own. And I was like, I thought it'd be kind of cool. You know, you're adopted, and Dan's family, and you know. And she's like, okay. I was like, well, what I ended up finding out, I was like, is that Dan is not my biological father.
What did she say?
I mean, she was, I don't think I've ever seen that expression on anyone before or since. Like, so shocked and disbelief and confusion and just, what are you saying? Like, yes, he is. Like, what are you even talking about? And I was like, I will fill in all the details for you of like how. She's like, are you sure? What do you mean? Oh my gosh. I was like, I can explain all of it. I was like, but I just need you to know the end of the story is that I met the person who it actually is, and he's wonderful, and he's so excited, and it's a good thing, and I'm okay. And even if he wasn't, I'm still okay. Like, I'm not going off the rails here.
How is she?
We're okay. So she's crying,
Okay.
and she's like, I can't believe you did this in a public place. I
Oh,
was like,
when you're like, I
I
don't
was
know.
like, I had to do it in a public place. Imagine if we were.
Right.
Yeah. But she she just at this point just kept saying, "Oh my gosh, Melody, I'm so sorry. I'm so
she
sorry.
felt the shame.
All the years of the things you've experienced because of Dan." She's like, "Are you sure?" She just kept going back to, "How is this possible?" And I said, "No, Mom, it's okay. Like, you just need to know. It's like, it's really easy for me to forgive 22-year-old you. Like,
Yeah.
that girl was doing the best she could and had a lot that she was up against at the time. And I fully know that, like, that you thought this was true too."
Yeah, that's
gonna
a
be
very nice thing to do that you didn't have to do because, you know, in terms of parent and child relationships, but that was very generous and loving.
Thank you. It does feel like, I mean, all of us, right? Most of us are doing the best we can with what we've been dealt. You know? And there's times that we all, like, you know, maybe phone it in and don't do the best we can. But I think most of us are.
I think you know your mom's heart,
you know?
and I think that's different. I think that only you know that.
Yeah.
Because there are some people who have the capability of doing.
You're right.
Much more, and they decide not to. So I think you know her heart, and I think that that was what you were.
Absolutely. I knew my mom. There was no way all those years she could have allowed me to be in that situation. If she had a shred of doubt, she would have tried to figure it out. And
so
she didn't.
So she hasn't met him since, though.
She hasn't since.
Nope.
Yeah, no, the story's still developing, and I think they both will at some point. But it hasn't.
What about Dan?
Dan, I was the most afraid of telling because I felt like here's this guy who, like, he doesn't have any other children. As far as we know, I mean, she takes away from me. But
everybody take 20. Everybody spit.
You can all call me after you take it if you need surprises.
If anybody needs therapy from their 23andMe records, call Mel.
I'm here for you.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I was afraid to tell him because I thought, oh my gosh, like, is this gonna throw him off course again? Like, is this gonna be the thing?
That is
like,
so much pressure.
And I felt like, why do I need to? I don't need to tell him. I'm okay with him thinking I'm his biological daughter for the rest of my life. Like, in his life, why would I take that away from him? And then come to find out, Jimmy and Dan and my mom, they're all from Glendale, California. Mm-hmm. And they all have, thanks to Facebook, mutual friends.
Okay.
So it was like, you know, this has turned into something so beautiful and a story I want to be able to share, just like I'm doing right now. And I don't want to treat it like it's shameful or a secret. I want it to be something that can even be, like, hopeful and light up a different path for other people. And so, given that, I need to tell Dan because...
Oh, you haven't told him yet?
No, this was my thinking at the time. I have.
Like, oh gosh, we better not.
Yeah,
we better not make this live.
No, because because I felt like I don't ever want him to hear any other way, you know, and I don't want to treat this as something that I can't share.
Yeah.
And so I did.
Yeah.
And I went into that feeling like, okay, I just need to reassure him and tell him I'm not going anywhere, and he'll still always be in my life, and I'll always still consider him like a father in my life, and that we're, you know, that I love him, I think, before him. And so I was like,
all prepared,
so scared, and wanted it to go well, and it was in a way like the most parental he's ever been, and that when I told him, the first thing he said was well, first he just said he was really confused and just was like, what?
Yeah.
Huh?
Right.
And once he kind of wrapped his head around it, the, like, real first thought he had was like, well, honey, I'm not going anywhere.
Oh.
Like, I love you. And it was like he immediately was trying to reassure me that he wasn't going anywhere and that our relationship wasn't going to change and that he was so proud.
That was a growth moment for Dan.
Yeah. And it was so cool because even in that, you know, I'd been trying to make sure I was going to do what I could to take care of him. Yeah. And instead he assumed this, like, responsibility that he needed, which was to take care of me in that moment. Yeah. And that was so beautiful.
How did Wayne react?
He really didn't believe it. He was like, what are these DNA tests? No,
oh.
They're not real. It's not, I don't know what you're saying. I don't think this is true. So I really had to convince him for a while, like, no, Dad, like, it's real. He's like, but, I mean, do these things hold up in a court of law? I was like,
yes, Dad, it's DNA.
Yes, they do, actually.
So, okay.
Like, call me back when you learn more science.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah, right. So, okay, hold on. So...
But he's been great too. And
so
sorry, I should
this
say that.
No, but I mean, I feel like this really overwhelming like event in your life, like it could have gone so many different ways, and yet you trusted the process and you were at a place in your life where you were okay either way, right? And I just feel like it's such a blessing that now you have 3 dads.
3.
You have 3 of them. You have 3 dads. You have a new mom. You have lots of siblings. Like you now are, I mean, loved by even more people. Like that's a redemptive story.
It's incredible.
When you thought your redemption was over and you keep being redeemed, I think that's a beautiful story to share. Listen, with 23andMe out there, I'm sure you're not the only one. Like this is like a thing.
No, even since taking it, friends of mine knowing my story, I get calls randomly whenever somebody in their world goes through something, and I just feel like soon it'll be a dime a dozen. Like there's probably a lot of grandmas and grandpas in our graves these days that thought they took secrets with them before DNA was a thing that are now all being found out, and it's crazy. But I think like that's partly what makes me honored to share, because I think one of my biggest takeaways is this like experiencing of how your heart just it can expand. It has the capacity to love multiplies and your heart gets bigger. Nobody in my world has been demoted or replaced. Like my heart just got bigger and has put more people inside of it.
I see.
Dan hasn't been kicked out. My dad hasn't been kicked out. Like my mom hasn't been, like renegotiated.
There's room for more.
There's just room for more. Like love gets bigger, and the only piece of that I could control was my own. I didn't get any say on Jimmy or his wife or his family or his brother, any of them, and I feel insanely fortunate that they've been the way that they've been. But I also feel like, right before I found all of this out, about 3 weeks before, I met this girl who now has become a really dear friend. And when I met her, she shared her story with me, which was that she found out the dad who raised her wasn't actually her dad. Like
she told you that before
any of this happened to me. Like 3 weeks before I found out. So
that is the power of sharing stories.
Yeah.
Because she just got vulnerable with you, and it gave you a person to go to.
Absolutely.
That is a beautiful thing. I gotta shut the door really quick.
Yeah.
Keep talking.
Yeah. It was this it felt like this little kind personal present from God that I would get to know this girl.
That is so cool.
Yeah. She and her experience, she just was telling me how beautiful it was, and I remember crying as she was telling it to me, and at the time I didn't have any personal connection to her story. I just thought it was so beautiful, and she now had a relationship with her new father. The father who raised her had since passed, but the way that she had processed it all, and she had a different situation with her mom, but she forgave her mom and had this cool relationship with her. And I just was so moved by all of it. And I really feel like 3 weeks later, when all of my stuff first hit the fan, it was like she had illuminated this whole other path as an option that I could walk with it. That it didn't have to be bad or horrible or traumatizing even. It could be beautiful. And that's not to say there's not room for your feelings of, oh my gosh, this is insane.
It could be beautiful
that's all real.
And hard at the same time.
But she did paint this like hope in it. And so I held on to that even before Jimmy was who Jimmy turned out to be. You know, that and the hope wasn't even about Jimmy being so awesome. It was just about it can be okay. I can be okay, and my story can still be okay in my life, and the way I love people and my world goes, it can be okay. And so I feel like she gave that gift to me, and I want to keep paying that forward to other people,
What I find is even with me, just in terms of sharing my stories, you gain more friends.
Yeah.
You meaningful friends,
really meaningful,
not friends that are chit-chatting about the weather or the latest TMZ gossip. It's real friends talking about real things that really matter, that really help people.
Right.
That's why I'm all about it, and I'm so proud of you, because this could have been a place of shame where shame makes you hide and and yet you said no. I'm not doing that. I'm doing it this way, and I'm going to be public, and I'm proud of you, and I think your story is going to help a lot of people. If there was something that you could say to somebody, if you know, who's taking 23andMe and is finding out, like, what would you say, like, to them? Like, would you give that? Yeah, like what?
Yeah. Well, I would always say that before you take it, and maybe just like take a beat before and just recognize, even if it's not something that directly impacts you, it might be directly impacting a cousin or something else that you find out about someone else in your world, that like there's just a responsibility that whether we're looking for it or not suddenly becomes ours. And so just being a little bit more mindful of that, I guess. But also that whatever you find out, like, we don't get to control anybody else in it, you know?
Yeah.
We don't get that. But we also don't have to be defined by anybody else in it. So whether that person is still alive or not, or an addict or not, or wants everything to do with you or nothing to do with you, like, at the end of the day, that actually doesn't have anything to say about who you are. And I think if you can hold on to that, you're in a much better place to explore however much you want to explore. And you don't have to explore anything. You can stay in the world that you're in if you want to. But I think there's potential for your world to expand in really beautiful ways if you're open to it. And
That is some great advice.
Just one step at a time.
Yeah,
one step at a time. You can't rush any of it.
You know, man, like if I was in that situation, offering yourself some grace.
Yeah.
It's okay to
kind
feel.
to yourself.
Let yourself feel all the feels.
Yeah. Yeah, and to your point of not rushing yourself, like, take the time you need, pay attention, find your people, find your tribe.
Find your people.
And give it to them. It's not for everybody right away. It's for the people that can help you really hold
I think
it
anybody
and
that's
sit
going
with
through
it.
trauma, okay?
Yeah.
Find your safe people.
Yes.
Not all people are safe. Not all good people are safe.
Correct. Yeah,
Just
correct.
because they're nice doesn't mean they're safe.
Yeah.
Find your safe people.
Yeah.
Tell them. Let them help you. Listen to things like this. Find, and you know what? I'm all about the therapy.
Yeah.
Because therapy changed my life too. Find a therapist who is incredibly versed in trauma. They can help you navigate your feelings. A simple marriage and family therapist or a social license, they're not going to have the tools that you need to get through a season.
Right, yeah,
that is so
depending,
traumatic.
right. Well, and you know what's interesting is I think because I had done quite a few years of therapy prior to this, in a way it was almost like preventative medicine that like keeps you from getting the disease later. You know, like like I felt like that really did help equip me to embrace all of this the way that I did, or to walk through it the way I did. That like, even though I did see a therapist for a little bit afterwards, I didn't feel as rattled by it all as maybe I would have, like you said, I found out when I was 25, you know?
Yeah.
And I think some of that comes from like doing the work, doing like exercising those muscles earlier on.
I remember when I first started seeing my therapist, and she called it work. And I was like, what are you talking about? This is work. Oh no, it is hard work. And even just changing the patterns of thinking and changing the way that you respond and react to things. I mean, that's what makes you who you are. And I think that that's the beautiful thing about your story, is that you were able to respond in a different way than you would have if you hadn't have done the work. Yeah. And that's beautiful. Yeah. So I'm just so proud of you, Mel.
Thank you.
Is there anything that you want to say before we close?
Yeah, just that I don't want it to appear that it's been all like perfect and easy and beautiful. You know, there's still messy pieces and you know, plenty of like loose ends, but that's okay too. That's like real. And I think I'm still grateful to be in a place that feels like really good with it, to be able to share about it. And want to encourage people wherever they're at, whether they've got 3 dads or 1 or none or whatever, like there's, you know,
go dad.
It's cool even just to see the way that redemption comes in so many different forms. And prior to all of this, it was my grandpa, and then at times it was my uncle, and at other times it's just been groups of friends. And I think when you start to see the world and the people around you as gifts to you, it's just like extra sources of love for you that you get to be loved by and you get to love back.
Well, I think that's a point. Right? I think that's a really good point, is that that you love and that love you back. So
Yeah,
you
it has
have
to be a two-way
be,
street.
and the reason that I
Yeah.
think that you were able to find these safe people that really love you is because you're a safe person who really loves others.
Thanks.
And that happens from doing the work,
Thanks.
right?
It makes a difference, yeah.
Okay, so if anybody
Yeah.
watches this or sees this and feels like they want to reach out, is there a way they could reach out? Like just via Instagram,
yeah,
or
probably
they just
Instagram
DM
is
you or something?
the easiest, yeah.
So
Mel Joy Will, like
Mel?
Melody Joy Wilson, but
At
Mel
Mel Joy
Will.
Okay.
WIL.
And if you have a story that you want to share, or that you feel like you're in a place that could bring hope or healing to somebody else, just reach out. You can DM me, email me, jenblossom.com, or at Gmail, jenblossom@gmail.com. And then I have
And
Jen,
it's Jen with 2 N's.
and it's 2 N's. Goodness gracious. I'll probably have a link or something. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing more powerful than sharing stories, and I've had a lovely time sitting with you, and I'm so blessed by you, and I can't wait to have you back and hear more of the story, because it's not over.
Thanks.
You know?
Yeah, no, I've got, big fat Greek wedding one day, so.
Good, I love it. Invite me. I can't wait.
Good.
Opa!
Love
All right.
you, Jen.
Love
Thank you.
Mwah.
Mwah.
Bye.
Bye.